Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in life when God begins to shift things around us, and we may not understand why. We may feel discomfort, confusion, or even pain, but in those moments, God is doing something extraordinary. He is separating you from the very thing that has been draining you, diminishing you, and suffocating the purpose He has placed within you. One of the most challenging separations to experience is when God removes a narcissist from your life. A narcissist is not just a person with an inflated ego. They are individuals who manipulate, control, and deceive, keeping you in a cycle of emotional and spiritual bondage. They come disguised as friends, mentors, partners, or even family members. They appear charming, yet behind that charm is a selfish agenda that seeks to exploit and dominate. But when God steps in, when He orchestrates divine separation, there is a reason, there is a purpose, and there is a transformation that follows. Many of us struggle with letting go because we do not see what God sees. We are attached to familiarity, afraid of what life will look like without that person. But let me tell you this: when God removes a narcissist from your life, He is making room for something greater. He is positioning you for healing, for restoration, and for elevation. Tonight, I want to walk you through the divine process of separation. I want to open your eyes to what happens when God steps in and removes the narcissist from your life. There are 7 key things that begin to unfold, and if you embrace them, you will step into a new dimension of freedom, clarity, and divine destiny. God reveals the true nature of the narcissist. When God begins to separate you from a narcissist, the first thing He does is pull back the veil. For so long, you may have been blinded by emotional attachment, false promises, or even spiritual manipulation. But God, in His infinite wisdom, begins to open your eyes. He allows you to see the narcissist not as they pretend to be, but as they truly are. At first, this revelation is shocking. You begin to replay past conversations, past behaviors, and moments when you overlooked red flags. You start to realize that what you once thought was love was actually control, and what you believed was support was merely a means to keep you bound. This unveiling can be painful because it forces you to confront a reality you may have been avoiding. God allows this revelation to happen because without it, you might never leave. Many people stay in toxic relationships because they are deceived. They believe the narcissist will change, that things will get better, that if they just pray harder or love more, the situation will shift. But God shows you the truth so you can stop living in false hope and start walking in divine clarity. This revelation is not just about the narcissist, it is also about you. God is showing you how you have tolerated mistreatment, how you have ignored the warning signs, and how you have allowed yourself to be diminished. He is awakening your spirit, making you aware of the ways you have been entangled in a destructive cycle. Once your eyes are opened, you can no longer unsee the truth. You start to recognize the patterns, the manipulation tactics, and the way the narcissist operates. You begin to see that the relationship was never truly about love, but about power and control. And as painful as this realization is, it is the first step toward freedom. This is why some people experience a sudden shift in their perspective. One day everything seemed fine, and the next day they cannot ignore what they now know. This is God's doing. He is removing the blinders because he loves you too much to let you stay deceived. The revelation is painful, but it is necessary. God removes the narcissist's influence over you. When God begins to separate you from the narcissist, one of the most powerful things he does is break their influence over your mind, emotions, and spirit. You may not have realized it, but over time, the narcissist's words, actions, and manipulations created a deep psychological and emotional hold on you. They conditioned you to seek their approval, to walk on eggshells around them, and to feel guilty for wanting to be free. But when God steps in, he dismantles every stronghold they had over your life. At first, you may feel disorientated because your mind has been programmed to respond to the narcissist's manipulation. You may feel tempted to go back, to reach out, or to apologize even when you've done nothing wrong. But this is where God does something miraculous. He starts shifting your thoughts. He begins renewing your mind, changing the way you see yourself and the way you respond to the narcissist's tactics. What once made you feel guilty no longer affects you the same way. The emotional weight they had over you starts to weaken. One of the ways God removes their influence is by exposing their patterns. You begin to recognize their gaslighting, their lies, and their emotional manipulation for what they really are. Instead of reacting with fear, guilt, or confusion, you start responding with wisdom and discernment. You see their words as empty, their threats as powerless, and their control as an illusion. This is when the shift truly begins, when what once had power over you loses its grip. God also brings moments of divine intervention to reinforce the separation. Have you ever noticed that after praying for clarity, you suddenly experience something that makes it impossible to ignore the truth? Maybe they do something so outrageous that you can no longer make excuses for them. Maybe God allows you to overhear a conversation, see a message, or witness an act of betrayal that shatters the last illusion you were holding on to. This is God ensuring that their influence is broken completely. As this process unfolds, you will notice a newfound sense of peace. The things that used to trigger you no longer have the same effect. The narcissist's words no longer shape your emotions. You no longer feel the need to explain yourself to them, to win their approval, or to walk in fear of their reactions. This is the work of God. He is delivering you from the mental and emotional chains they placed on you. And finally, God gives you the strength to walk away without looking back. He reinforces your decision with an inner conviction that is unshakable. Where once you doubted whether you could live without them, now you are certain that leaving was the best thing for you. Where once you felt weak, now you feel empowered. This is God restoring your autonomy, your freedom, and your divine authority over your own life. God begins the healing process in your heart. Separation from a narcissist is not just a physical departure, it is an emotional and spiritual detox. When you've been entangled with someone who thrives on control and manipulation, they leave wounds that run deep. But here is the good news. God never removes you from something without healing what was broken. The moment he separates you from the narcissist, he begins a work of restoration in your heart. At first, healing feels uncomfortable. You may feel the weight of sadness, grief, and even withdrawal. Just like a person detoxing from a toxic substance, your soul must go through a process of release. The memories, the emotional attachments, and even the false guilt will try to resurface. But God is there, gently guiding you through the process. He does not rush you, nor does He expect you to heal overnight. He walks with you, layer by layer, unraveling the pain and replacing it with His peace. One of the ways God initiates healing is by helping you confront the lies you believed. The narcissist conditioned you to think that you were not enough, that you were unworthy, that you were the problem. But God's truth overrides every lie. He begins to whisper into your spirit, reminding you of who you really are, loved, chosen, and precious in His sight. He dismantles the negative self-talk and replaces it with divine affirmation. Healing also comes through deep forgiveness. Not just forgiveness toward the narcissist, but also forgiveness toward yourself. Many people struggle with regret after leaving a narcissist. They ask, how did I let this happen? Why did I stay so long? But God does not want you to live in condemnation. He reminds you that He has washed away every mistake, that He has turned even your pain into a stepping stone for your purpose. Another sign that healing is taking place is the return of joy and peace. You begin to experience moments where you feel light again, where laughter comes naturally, where the weight of oppression lifts off your shoulders. This is evidence that God is doing a deep work in you. The more you allow Him to heal, the more you will see the beauty in your heart again. And finally, God brings full circle restoration. He not only heals your heart, but also gives you new vision, new hope, and new love. First from Him and then from the right people He places in your life. Healing is not just about recovery. It is about stepping into the abundant life God has for you. Free from the chains of the past, God restores your identity and self-worth. One of the greatest tragedies of being entangled with a narcissist is that they strip you of your sense of self. They condition you to believe that your worth is tied to their approval, their validation, and their acceptance. Over time, you begin to lose sight of who you are. But when God steps in and removes the narcissist, He does not just free you from their presence. He begins the divine work of restoring your identity. At first, you may feel lost. You may ask yourself, who am I without them? Because the narcissist built a false reality where they defined your worth, you may feel as though you have no identity apart from them. But this is where God begins to remind you of the truth. He whispers to your spirit saying, you are mine. You were fearfully and wonderfully made. You are not defined by the opinions of man, but by my word. God uses this season of separation to rebuild your confidence. He begins to strip away the words the narcissist planted in your mind, every lie they told you. You're not good enough, you're too much, you'll never find better, is replaced with God's truth. He affirms that you are valuable, that you are loved, and that you were never created to live under the control of another human being. As your identity is restored, you start to see yourself the way God sees you. You no longer measure your worth by how someone treats you. You no longer feel the need to shrink yourself to accommodate someone else's insecurities. You stand tall, knowing that you are complete in Christ. This is the moment when you truly begin to walk in freedom. Because freedom is not just about leaving a toxic person. It is about reclaiming who you were always meant to be. One of the ways God reinforces your identity is by leading you into His presence. When you spend time with Him, He reminds you that your purpose is far greater than what you lost. He realigns your vision, gives you new dreams, and ignites the gifts inside of you that were once suppressed. The narcissist may have convinced you that you were powerless, but God is showing you that you were always powerful. God reconnects you to His purpose for your life. The enemy's agenda in sending a narcissist into your life was not just to hurt you, it was to derail you from your God-given purpose. The enemy knew that if he could get you entangled in a toxic cycle, distracted by pain, and consumed with trying to fix someone who could not be fixed, you would never step into the fullness of your calling. But when God separates you from the narcissist, He also restores the divine blueprint for your life. At first, you may feel like you wasted time. You may grieve the years that were spent in emotional turmoil. But let me tell you something. God is a redeemer of time. He does not just heal your heart, He restores the years that the enemy tried to steal. He begins to align you with opportunities, connections, and revelations that position you for your destiny. One of the first signs that God is reconnecting you to your purpose is that you begin to dream again. The things you once put on hold, the passions you once neglected, and the assignments you once ignored suddenly come back to life. You feel a stirring in your spirit, a divine urgency to move forward. This is God reigniting the fire that the narcissist tried to extinguish. As you walk deeper into your purpose, God begins to refine you. He takes everything you went through and turns it into wisdom. He uses your testimony to help others. He takes the pain you endured and transforms it into power. Suddenly, what was meant to destroy you becomes the very thing that propels you forward. This is why you must never despise your past, because God is using it to shape your future. Another way God reconnects you to your purpose is by changing your environment. He removes you from spaces that stifle your growth and places you where you can thrive. He brings new relationships, divine connections, and kingdom-minded people into your life. He surrounds you with those who see the greatness inside of you and call it forth. And finally, as you step fully into your purpose, you realize that the separation was necessary. Had you stayed, you would have never become who God created you to be. Had you held on, you would have missed the destiny God had in store for you. This is why separation is not rejection, it is redirection. God is not just taking you out of something, He is taking you into something greater. God surrounds you with people who reflect His love. When you have been in a toxic relationship, you start to believe that dysfunction is normal. You become accustomed to walking on eggshells, questioning your worth, and expecting love to come with conditions. But God never intended for you to live in an atmosphere of fear and control. When He separates you from the narcissist, He does not leave you isolated. He surrounds you with people who reflect His love. At first, it may feel strange. You may struggle to receive kindness because you have been conditioned to expect manipulation. But as you heal, you begin to recognize the difference between counterfeit love and real love. You start to see what true godly relationships look like. Relationships that are built on honor, respect, and mutual care. One of the first ways God does this is by sending people who encourage your growth. These are individuals who celebrate you, who speak life into you, and who remind you of your value. They do not seek to control you. They seek to uplift you. They do not diminish you. They call out the greatness inside of you. God also restores divine friendships. Many times when you were with the narcissist, you were isolated from true friends and family. The narcissist wanted you to feel alone so they could maintain control. But when God removes them, He restores the relationships that were meant to bless you. He reconnects you with people who genuinely love you, people who want to see you flourish. And as He does this, you learn to love in a healthy way again. You learn that love is not about control, fear, or obligation. You learn that real love brings peace, not confusion. You begin to trust again, not because people are perfect, but because God has given you discernment to recognize the right people. Ultimately, God surrounds you with love because He wants you to experience relationships the way He intended. You were never meant to live in fear. You were never meant to beg for affection. You were created for love that reflects God's heart, pure, kind, and unwavering. And when He places these people in your life, you will finally understand what true godly relationships look like. God elevates you to a new level of spiritual maturity. When God separates you from the narcissist, He does not just change your circumstances, He changes you. He takes you to a new level of spiritual growth. What once broke you now strengthens you. What once confused you now gives you wisdom. You do not just survive the experience, you come out with a deeper understanding of God, yourself, and your purpose. At first, the process feels overwhelming, but as you grow, you realize that God was using this situation to develop you. You learn how to trust Him in ways you never did before. You gain spiritual discernment, recognizing deception before it takes root. You become wiser, stronger, and more anchored in God's truth. The old version of you would have tolerated manipulation. The new version of you walks in authority. The old version of you sought approval from man. The new version of you seeks approval from God alone. This is the power of elevation. God does not just set you free, He makes you unshakable. And as you walk in this new season, you will realize that what you lost cannot compare to what God has given you. You are free, you are whole, you are exactly where God intended you to be, and your best days are still ahead.